I don't know if anybody wants to sound the alarm or not, but there is a tornado bearing down on baby teenage Gerald with his earring.
Ladies and gentlemen, another episode of Two Peas on a Podcast where we review the latest and sometimes greatest movies every week. If you feel it, Nick was supposed to come in with Chase It. But here we are. Nick is back. Gerald with you, of course, and my buddy Nick has returned after his hiatus where he went to visit Tibetan monks overseas, and he's been in hibernation, meditating. You look good, man. How are you?
I didn't chime in because you're only to refer to me as the megastar from this point forward.
The megastar.
Start rolling that off with the tongue. See how that feels for you.
The megastar.
That's right. That's right.
All right,
As long as I have the LA Night shades on, you are to refer to me appropriately, sir.
So glasses guy, no more. It's megastar when you have
There's
those
still
glasses.
glasses. I mean, what do you want from me?
Mm-hmm.
I seriously, I love that whole audio gag at the beginning of the show was totally lost on the audio only listeners. They're like, what the hell is he talking about, Baby Gerald? Look at him, like video audio. This is why you got to watch on the YouTubes, baby. Look at his beautiful. I could scratch his little chin over here. I grab his little earring over there. Just get a little fingy on it. Ooh, baby.
That was a popular one during a live stream for The Cure too. So yeah.
Gotta love it. This is probably. I'm just honest to God. I think I'm just gonna keep adding things to this wallpaper every week. So like next week, what are we watching? What are we doing next week? Was this
Deadpool?
This is the
Wolverine.
Deadpool. So I'm gonna stick Deadpool like over here somewhere. Like, but
All
the
right.
tornado's still gonna be over there. Like, I'm just gonna keep adding to it now. I think. I
Keep
think it's
adding
just
to the
gonna
end of
keep
the
getting
year.
busier and busier. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, by the end of the year, it's just gonna be chaos. Like,
Just be a collage of
like a
all the stuff we
tornado. Gerald has whipped it all around and made it
Yeah.
into some kind of wild and crazy chaos. It's good to be back. Aside from a stint I did over on So Wizard last week where we talked about Neil Breen's "I Am Here." Now, which is a fantastic episode. Go listen to that if you haven't on So Wizard. Thrilled that they had me back because they hit their goal during live stream to raise $1,000 or more during their segment. It was a really, really fun time doing that. Aside from that, I really have not recorded or streamed or podcast or done a whole hell of a lot of anything. So it's good to be back on the microphone, and it's good to be here to talk about some wild wind, Gerald. Wild wind.
Yeah, we're talking about Twisters this week. What is?
I was
this, man?
disappointed. I was disappointed to find out that this is not a sequel to From Dusk Till Dawn.
I saw your thing on Facebook. Somebody corrected you though, so that's Titty Twisters. But you can't put, like you said, you can't put titty on the poster.
It's 2024. Everybody's woke. You can't put titty on a movie poster. I mean, unless you don't want people to come to the movie, or unless you want only a certain Geraldish kind of person to come to the theater. Like in Michigan again. Is that?
Yeah. I go see my movies in Michigan. That's for sure. What is this though? Is this what is this? Is this a legacy sequel? Is this a sequel? Is this a remake? Is this a reboot? What the hell is this?
It's another movie with the same font in the title. With the pluralized now. It's just Twisters. But other than that, I'm
just confused. I don't know.
Or...
Well, in general, yes, but we'll talk about the movie and our thoughts on it, but I don't know what this is supposed to be in connection to the first movie.
I don't think it's supposed to be. Is it supposed to be?
But it is connected, though. I mean, like you said, the same font, Dorothy, the machine that they had in the first one's in this one. You know what I mean?
I didn't even know that. I haven't seen the first one since the 90s, Gerald, so...
I mean, they're definitely connected, but I just don't really know how. I guess we'll get there. Nick, you want to talk about some questions the fans threw at us? We try to answer questions from the fans every week in what we call one big question.
You gotta ask yourself a question.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
How dare you not let me take 6 weeks off until I threatened to strike or something? It was, guys.
Dude, I wanted you to get some downtime.
He wouldn't let me out of here.
I tried to let you out of here. What are you talking about? Well, I didn't want you to be out of here, but I let you out of here.
Thank you. By the way, thank you so much to everybody who jumped in and guest hosted and kept Gerald company. I guess Gerald was lonely. We just got to keep Gerald company for the last 6 weeks or so. So thank you so much, everybody that jumped in and reviewed different stuff. The only movie I saw that you reviewed during that entire time frame was Inside Out 2.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, Miss Lindsay Dunn came on and talked to me about that one. From what I recall, she wasn't too high on it, but I enjoyed that movie. I thought it was a good family film, Inside Out too. One big question. Let's see what the fans had to say this week as we get into our Twisters discussion here shortly. Nick, you said there was an interesting one over on Facebook you wanted to shout out real quick?
Yeah, destruction in human form, which is appropriate for the question that he asked. Jared Taylor wants to know which natural disaster scares you the most, Gerald.
Huh. I would say probably a hurricane. I think hurricanes maybe, just because I've lived through a couple of those and I've seen the havoc they can wreak. Obviously, a tornado is no joke either in the Midwest and different areas of the country, but I've just never really experienced it personally or had anybody really affected, at least that I know of, by a twister. So, I mean, they're all scary, let's be honest. But for me, I would probably say a hurricane. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's probably like a regional thing, right? Like if you're somebody who lives in an area where they get, not like upstate New York doesn't get a tornado from time to time, but I've never had one come like near to me, like hit like my
Right.
immediate area or anything like that. So I don't have like a lot of exposure to any kind of natural disaster or anything like that. I don't know if I have a really like super good answer to it. You know what? I guess if I had to just throw one off of there, probably tsunami, man, because tsunamis are like just at the utmost devastation, like just absolute wall of water washing inland. Like I mean, you can't, like tornado at least is like a small alley, and hurricanes, you know, once they hit the land, their wind speed dies down, and earthquakes even. I mean, earthquakes are tough too, but I mean, man, tsunamis, like the water just recedes out, and then that just giant tidal wave. I mean, nothing is escaping the path of that. Absolutely nothing. For a tsunami. I mean, that would be some scary. Like, just imagine you were like in a place where you knew a tsunami was imminent. You know, you'd be booking it for high ground so fast. Well, look, you're already on high ground. There he is. He already made it there. He's over the hill. He's protected now. He's safe.
Earring Gerald is fine, but the rest of us are in trouble. Let's see. Brett from Dissect That Film over on Discord. He says,
Brett.
Hey, Brett, we love you. He says, do you think if Bill Paxton was still around, he would have returned for this movie?
I find it weird. Now, so again, I haven't seen the original since the 90s. I didn't even know that Dorothy thing was in the original one. Mm-hmm. So I guess my question is, like, do you know that if there's any other actor or any other element of this that comes back from the original film? Have you read about it at all? Because I haven't read about it at all.
Not really. I mean, I'm pretty...
From what I've heard, there was none.
I'm not. I haven't read about it. That's for sure. But they're pretty. Like, there's a couple little Easter eggs for like true fans, but they're not like obvious nods to the original. Aside from the Dorothy machine that I talked about, because that was the same one they used in the original film, and they talk about how old it is and it's beat up and everything. So it's probably the same one that was in that movie. Kind of handed down. When we get into the review, I'm going to point out a couple things that my wife actually said, who's also a fan of the original. And I took her and my son to see it, so I've seen it twice now. We went to see it yesterday because I wanted them to check it out on the big screen. And she had a couple good points that I'll wait because it's kind of spoilery. But
I think
not really. I mean, aside from the Dorothy thing, not really.
Like, I mean, there's probably places where you could have shoved more original film references in this thing. Like, you could have made the main character's mom, Helen Hunt, I guess, from the original one or something. And then, but that would have been like this whole super nostalgia trip. Like when she shows up at the farm in the movie, it would have been this whole thing. Like there would have been pictures of Helen Hunt and Bill Paxton and all these kinds of different things and all these references to the first movie that I don't necessarily think that this movie needs. I think that this, and granted, again, it's been a very long time since I saw the original. We haven't even gotten into the review proper of the movie yet, but I don't think it's a disservice to the original to just have this kind of be its own thing, like spiritually a successor to that movie, but not like direct sequel or anything like that. Not everything needs to be a direct sequel, especially a movie about tornadoes. Like it doesn't need to be like, we don't need like a whole bunch of legacy characters. Like we don't need to turn this into Jurassic World where we got the same characters coming back again and again to like, you know, they're out there with, I mean, literally like on your shirt, like, you know, wrangling tornadoes or, I mean, you could get into really weird, wacky B movie kind of depths, I guess, with this franchise if you really wanted to get into that territory. But I don't know. I wouldn't. You don't need it. I don't think the movie needs it to just say that blanket over the top.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get there in a second, but I definitely don't think it needs it either. Using the word needs it. I think it would have been cool. I mean, I love Bill Paxton, so, I mean, for him to pop up in like a cameo role or something like that. And I think to answer his Brett question, we'll never know because rest in peace, but I think he probably would have done some kind of cameo in this. I don't know what. I don't know if he would have been, the mayor of one of the towns or something,
If you want me to be
weird,
like fair about it, he still could have done something in it. They could have just had a photo of him like somewhere. Like somewhere where they go and they're talking about the history of tornado chasing and storm chase and trying to learn more and more about these storms, about this weather, things like that. Like there could have been all those elements that they could have added in here somehow.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, there's ways that they could have even stuck that kind of thing in here, and they chose not to. And I guess it ask the question of like how much nostalgia is too much, And like I said, I don't think this film needed it, so I'm fine without it.
Well, Nick, let's see how fine we are about it. I'm glad to have you back, brother. I missed you, and you kind of touched on it a second ago, but I do really, really want to thank all the guests that came on the last 6 weeks or so. We had a lot of great friends in the podcasting world that jumped in to your chair over there, buddy, and talked to me about a lot of new releases. And I had Stu on last week from Stu World Order. It was his first time on the show, and we got to do an episode together about long legs. And by the way, I figured you out, by the way. Because, I put our schedule on the spreadsheet, and you saw all the horror movies we're going to be doing. And you said, you know what? I'm taking a break. We covered the last, 4 weeks, we covered horror. So
I got no interest in horror movies anyway. Like that's not here nor there. But I mean,
hey, but I got to see Nick Cage in Long Legs.
For the life of me, and I mean this. I appreciate you. Holding the fort. I mean, it's your show anyway, but I appreciate all the guests and all that stuff coming in and holding the fort down and taking good care of everything. It was really, 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 really amazing. We have an amazing community of listeners. We have an amazing community of peers in the podcasting community. That it's always wonderful that we can step in and do stuff like that. I'm gonna keep spinning my wheels. I've got an idea for like a Patreon series I want to do as part of these. Where it's going to be like, I don't know, more to come on that. We'll talk more off mic about it before I really unwrap more stuff about it. But
to hear that you got some downtime makes me feel really good. I'm in a good place, and I always love sharing the mic with you. So whenever you want to do it, man, LA night glasses or not, I'm ready.
I can't wait till I get the real ones. Sometime this week I'll get the real one. Like I like these ones, don't get me wrong, but I can't wear these functionally. You can't literally see anything. Like if I tried to drive with these, I'd die. Like 100 I'd die instantaneously. But I just wanted to mention because I did get a chance to watch Inside Out too. Mm-hmm. I really love that movie. I think that anybody in their life who's ever struggled, and spoilers if you didn't listen to that review or see Inside Out 2 yet, but by the box office, pretty much everybody on the planet's seen it at this point.
Yeah.
Right? Basically, but I mean, like anybody who's ever had that moment where they begin to tell themselves they're not good enough for something, like, holy shit, that's one of the biggest gut punches I've had in a movie in a very long time. Because it just speaks to me personally. Like, I definitely struggle with that a lot. Just in terms of like speaking to go back to my mental health and stuff, I struggle so much sometimes with telling myself I'm not good enough for XYZ, whatever. And I think a lot of people, man, the rest of that movie, like there's some things in that movie that I probably wasn't the biggest fan of. It was a little slow in places, maybe necessarily, but Jesus, that's one of the most emotionally heavy moments. And think about this, a kid's movie. Like it's a kid's movie. Like you got teenagers going to see that really, I mean, what I love about it so much is I think it's going to be such a great thing for teenagers to help them kind of understand their sense of self in that kind of way where your sense of self isn't just built on one single thing or only good emotions or only good memories or whatever else. Like everything makes up who we are, everything that we've ever been through, good, bad, and everything in between. And I love that so much. Like, so if you haven't seen it, if you haven't had a chance to see it, go see it. It's so good. Like I loved it so much. Like I probably like the first one like a little better as a film. But in terms of like the emotional weight and the emotional through line of both of them, I don't think one's better than the other in terms of just the emotional through line of it. If you understand my meaning, I think they're both perfect in that way. Both perfect in that way.
Yeah, it was a great film. I mean, I prefer the first, but I mean, there's no refuting that it was a great follow up, and the emotional connection was there for sure because she's getting older. Riley's getting older. And it's easier to connect to things as she gets older. Different emotions start to introduce themselves that we experience pretty much every day, whether it's embarrassment or whatever. So, anxiety.
I don't know how you have because obviously they're going to probably try to want to make a third one now that it's made $85 bajillion in box office or whatever.
Yeah, we talked about that actually. What they would do. Yeah.
if it's about Riley becoming an adult or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you have like a G-rated kids movie or whatever?
That's what we were saying.
An adult that's like really depressed and suicidal or something like that.
Yeah. That's what Lindsay and I were talking about. I was like, what do they do next? Because, when
I don't know, dude.
Because, you start introducing like sex and like, different feelings of, you can't do that in a Pixar movie, you wouldn't think. So,
next one's going to have to, I don't know. Next one needs a new rating or something like that. I don't know. Give it to, I don't know. I don't even know.
Well, let's see what we think of Twisters. Okay, this I'm really excited to talk to you about this, regardless of what we feel about the film. I'm excited to discuss it, and so is Earring Gerald back there. Did you draw that Twister, by the way, or did you find that on the internet? That's pretty good.
I found that on the internet. There's no way I could draw anything near that good.
It looks pretty good.
All
right,
on,
so
now.
we're gonna give our score out of 10. We have not discussed it with each other yet on Twisters, and then we will tell you why we landed on that number. It's what we call the early score reveal.
Damn it, this always happens. I think I'm gonna score and then I never score. It's not fair.
All righty, here we go, Nicholas. Your first early score reveal in 6 weeks. Last time you were on the show, what did we talk about last time you came on? What was the last movie you and I did together?
Listen.
Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, or was there something after that?
There had to be something after that, because that was mid-May still.
Man, it's been a while, buddy. I missed you. You switched to the real glasses and everything. I'm getting emotional. All right, here we go. I'm going to count us in.
I had to switch over to the real, just for you, baby. I had to switch over.
Yeah, it's looking fucking good, right? It's like riding a bike, I tell you. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1 on Twisters. Here's Daddy's score right here. What do you got, buddy? It's a 7 out of 10 for me. It's a 9 out of 10 from you.
Come on now. Come on. This is like the perfect summer blockbuster, man.
Oh my God, I agree. Wow.
This is like the perfect summer blockbuster. It's not
Nick,
serious. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's popcorny. It's fun. It's silly. It doesn't take itself super seriously. It tries to have a lot of fun. Like I said, this is like the perfect summer movie. This is what summer movies should be. And
you know what?
Are meant to be.
I agree.
I love this.
I agree. I was afraid of you for this because I was afraid that you were going to let the logistics kick in to your rating and to your review and some of the kind of cheesy, over-the-top plot beats that we get in this movie. I was like, he's not going to go for that stuff. But this is a good time. I agree with you. So it was, just to let everybody know on the audio side, it was a 9 from Nick, which is a very high rating from this guy. In fact, have you rated anything that high this year? Because you had a couple 8s. You had Challengers, and I don't think you've rated anything over an 8 this year. I got to be honest. I got to go back and look at the records, but I don't think you have.
To go back. You'd have to go back and look at the. You have to go back and look at the score sheets because I can't. I'm trying to think.
I'll pull it up when you're talking in a second. But like I said, so a 9 from Nick, a 7 from me, which makes us an 8 overall from the P's, which is a very, very good score, especially with a lot of the mixed reviews I've been seeing since I saw it. I started looking at some people's reactions, and I'm like, what? You didn't like this? So I agree with you, Nick. I think this is literally the definition of a popcorn summer blockbuster. This is why you go to the movies to be entertained. I went to see this at a screening with our buddy Dan, producer Dan, with me to an early screening of this. It was like half critics, half public. It was packed in the Dolby Cinema. The sound design is great in this movie, which really played to that setting. And I'm not gonna speak for him, but I think he liked it too. And we had some qualms with it, which we'll get into a little bit probably on the spoiler side. But overall, it just kept me so invested. I felt like the pacing of this movie was perfect. In my opinion, even better than the first film, where the kind of character study parts and the emotional beats and the conversational dialogue and stuff wasn't too long before we got to our next action set piece. Like there was a nice like up and down where it's like, okay, this tornado just came through. We just had this great spectacle, and now they're trying to figure shit out. Do this, do that, do this.
Yeah.
Now we're back to our next tornado chase. Like it was a very well-paced movie that had a lot of action, a lot of kind of pulse-pounding moments. I'm with you, man. I will tell you on the spoiler side why I landed on a 7, because that's a good score, but not as highly as yours, obviously. But I'm so thrilled. I really am. Like, I just thought Nick Haskins was just going to shit all over this thing. I really did. I'm so happy.
I'm curious to see.
In fact,
we gotta wait till spoilers to figure out, because I want to know what you're talking about that you thought would be a bigger problem for me. But obviously,
I will. We'll
discuss.
Spoil
anything.
We'll discuss
before we get there or anything. Like
All right. Well, we'll do a promo break because I want to talk about this thing with you. Let's do a promo break, and then when we come back, we'll be into spoilers for Twisters. So grab onto something that's locked to the floor and don't blow away. We'll be right back. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Nick and I are here ready to discuss Twisters in full detail. So there will be spoilers going forward for this new blockbuster film. If you have not seen Twisters, please come back to the rest of this episode after you have seen it so you do not get spoiled. Nick, what do you want me to tell you what I was talking about? You want to start with that?
Yeah, I'm dying to know what you thought would be a big break for me.
It's not anything like necessarily specific, but I mean, this is one of those. Okay, well, in my opinion, so you tell me if you think this is correct or not. I think this is a movie that in order to enjoy it on the level that you and I did, you have to suspend disbelief. Yes or no?
I would agree.
Okay. So generally, that's kind of what I'm talking about. But especially when we get like to the last act of the movie, when, you know, Daisy Edgar-Jones is like driving by herself into the tornado to like essentially disintegrate the tornado before it gets to the town.
Right, yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, I'm not a meteorologist. You know what I mean? I actually haven't seen what meteorologists say about this movie or the first one. I don't know. I mean, maybe it is 100% scientifically accurate. I have no idea. But like the whole thing about creating this formula to shoot up inside of a tornado via a rocket on Glenn Powell's truck. And like, I don't know. It just is a very far-fetched story that I'm okay with because I'm not going to see a science accurate film like Oppenheimer, for example. I'm going to see two hot people chase tornadoes through the Midwest. You know what I mean? Like, and as that, I had a great time with it. But I'm sitting there thinking to myself, because I know you are a sucker for like breaks in logic, and that suspension of disbelief has sometimes been hard for you on previous reviews. So talk to me a little bit about why that wasn't really an issue for you. I mean, this is your film of the year right now. I'm going to pull it up right now on the sheet, but I think this might be your number one film of the year.
You'll have to take a look and let me know. I'm trying to think.
At least what we've talked about on the show.
Love Lies Bleeding was up there, but I know those were both lower than a 9. I'm not 100% sure. But, I mean, you said it just perfectly. I don't know anything about tornado science at all. I know absolutely nothing about it. So you could have told me that they released magic squirrels into the tornado to chew up the clouds, and I probably would have bought it. Okay? The reason why movies like Snowpiercer create huge logical breaks for me is because you can't have frozen metal train tracks that a train is rocketing over constantly where they never get any maintenance or repair, but also because of the cold weather, they'd be really brittle. Like, I understand what metal does in extreme cold and things like that, and you can't never maintain it, but they could never go outside. That's why stuff like Snowpiercer pisses me off and creates logical breaks that take me out of the film and not let me enjoy it. Like this, I don't know anything about tornado science, and I think, like, even if it's not necessarily based in fact, it seems like it's written intelligently enough from a place where it could be. Like, even if it's complete bunk, like, I think it's written in a way that it seems, to the layperson anyway, like, it seems like it's plausible. I mean, if this were, like, really a thing, then basically what they would have to do is they'd have to have, like, these stations of those barrels of whatever that stuff was, and, like, rockets of the silver stuff, all, like, literally all over the place. And just if a tornado goes over it and there's like, hopefully it works to dissolve it or something like that. I don't necessarily know how that works or anything like that.
Right.
Because, I mean, you can't, like, that'd be insane if you were the person that was like, okay, I got to drive into another one and break it up or whatever, which would be just absolute chaos. I think I don't necessarily know how that would work, but
It-
you know what? It made it didn't. It's like I like when I went to see Top Gun Maverick. Like take that for example. Like a lot of pilots have come out after the fact and debunked. Like it's another Glenn Powell movie. A lot of pilots have come out after the fact and talked about like different aspects of that movie that aren't really that realistic or whatever the case may be. But I think especially to the layperson, like it's enjoyable enough. I don't need every single movie to be 100% accurate. Like I love Braveheart, but that's not in any way remotely accurate to what actually happened in English history. Okay.
Right.
So I don't need a movie to be 100p like realism or whatever. It just can't. I don't know, and it's weird. It's not applicable in every single sense. Sometimes logic does break for me. Sometimes it doesn't. I really wish I could. I really wish I could explain it better than that, but I just can't.
Well, I think the best explanation to piggyback on what you're saying is that this is not the kind of movie that craves that type of explanation. This is a movie where you're intended to have fun, and unless you're a meteorologist who studies tornadoes as your job, you're probably not going to be as worried about those types of facts because that's not really what the movie's about. You know what I mean? You know, this was directed by Lee Isaac Chung, too, who did Minari a couple years ago, which was a film that I really loved that was in the Oscar race that year, and it was a beautiful family story. So he's an independent filmmaker who had done a couple things with A24, and he comes over here and does this like summer blockbuster. But I think that works in this case because he was able to do that character connection piece. I mean, the twisters are intended to be the central focus of the film, the action set pieces. But I thought, and I've seen some really just head-scratching, unfathomable reactions to Daisy Edgar-Jones in this movie. I thought she was great in this film I want to talk about the performances is what we're segueing to, but I just want to say about her specifically that in the first 10 minutes or so of the movie, when we get that opening sequence of them as college kids, and she loses most of her team in that scene.
Yeah.
And she had that energy of a young, excited, young science kid and college kid, and she, you know, was in love with the guy, I can't remember his name, the guy that was part of her team, and they were trying to get this grant, and she was so excited about what she had been studying and her projects and everything. And she was very just like college energy, you know, in that first opening, in that first 10 or 15 minutes. Then we segue after the tragedy, which I think it says 5 years later. And from that point to the rest of the movie, she's kind of always dealing with that grief and that guilt, her character is. So I think it makes sense that she's monotone in the last 2/3 of the movie because she's just carrying that burden with her to a point where she moved to New York City and doesn't even go to see her mom anymore, who she was super close to, and you know, doesn't answer her call when she calls her. But that all makes sense. I saw that, yeah. Her Iron Claw mom there, and now she's a mom in this too, yeah. But what about am I off about Daisy Edgar-Jones in this movie? Because I've seen a lot of people saying that she's just not acting in this film. And I'm like, what? I loved her in this.
I don't know what on earth that's based on. I mean, again, you mentioned the opening scene where she loses like that entire team. That's like emotional stuff. And the great thing about it is it's able to, at least it was for me, I don't know about anybody else, but it was able to evince emotions out of me, even though I didn't know anything about these characters. All I had was the couple minutes that we got with them before the storm hit, like when they're out there trying to get the storm. Like, I don't know anything about these characters, but the performances of all the characters, not just her, were enough to bring me into it that I really actually felt something. And, like, obviously, like, this is the Aaron Taylor Johnson in Godzilla sort of thing, where people were really critical of Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance in that movie. I actually really defended it because I'm like, he's been estranged from his parents. His mom died when he was a kid. He was trained to be like he was in the military. He was trained to not show his emotions all the time. And I thought he played that perfectly. I really thought he played that to a T. I think obviously like going back home where obviously it was her boyfriend or fiance or whatever it was, and a bunch of her other friends, and it was her idea. Like, this was her thing. This was what she wanted to test.
They were doing it for her, right?
That she wanted to test, that they were out there in the field trying to do, and it got a bunch of them killed. you know, because she was wrong, and she blamed herself. You're exactly right. She carries around a lot of guilt and everything for that. And I think that hangs on her like a heavy weight pretty much the entire rest of the movie. I thought that was that was really, really wonderful. And she starts to finally like maybe evolve a little bit in terms of like getting into the third act of the movie when she goes back home to her mom and she's looking at all of her old experiments, and then Glenn Powell shows up looking like Glenn Powell does. And
yeah, sure, man.
Let's talk about
him too.
Let some of that go. Some of that. I mean, she's obviously still got a lot of that guilt or whatever, but I think she finally gets back to a point where she realizes that what she had to offer previously and what she had done previously, it can do some good, you know. And I think that she reaches a point where that starts to become a thing. So I think she gets more invested in that sort of thing. Man, miss me with that. Miss me with that.
Yeah, I
completely.
agree.
There's no way she's not acting in this. She acted her ass off. She's great in this movie.
I agree.
Everybody's great in this movie. I loved everybody in this movie.
To your point too, just to kind of reiterate what we're both saying about her performance, and I want to defend it because I'm shocked at the number of people that are like, "What was she doing in this movie?"
What else has she been in? Like, I don't really recognize her from a lot of other stuff.
I really liked her with Sebastian Stan in that movie. You wouldn't have seen it because it was horror adjacent, but it was here. I'll look it up real quick. It was Fresh. She was in Fresh a couple years ago.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm looking at the list now of things that she was in, and I've never seen any of them. There was a
Where the Crawdads Sing might be the biggest.
She was in. Okay, cool.
Well, what I was going to say is, so when Javi, meets her in the coffee shop, and he's kind of trying to talk her into coming back to Oklahoma to help with his project. He says to her, have you ever thought to yourself why we were the two that survived? Yeah. It's like, because he's also carrying the guilt and the grief from the experience and just the survivor's guilt kind of involved with that. And he's channeling it by trying to, put forward this research that'll stop it from happening, that'll stop it from destroying these towns in Oklahoma and killing more people like the friends of theirs that passed. And she has the same grief, but she's kind of isolated herself and kind of disconnected from it. And she's doing it more abstractly for the, National Weather Service in New York. And like, she's responsible for sending out tornado warnings and that kind of shit. Yeah. So in her own way, she was kind of helping him, but it was more from a technical and not an emotional attachment part. So I loved her performance. I want to talk about Glenn Powell a little bit too. I mean, he's, we talked about, you weren't here. It was like the first week you were absent. Dan came on and we covered Hitman, which is another Glenn Powell property that came out. It's on Netflix right now, actually, if anybody wants to check it out.
Since when does Dan watch stuff on Netflix?
I know. It's something he's never done. And I told him, I was like, this is not like you.
Yeah.
But we talked about Hitman, and we talked about Glenn Powell's kind of star appeal and if he is a quote-unquote rising movie star and what that term means. A lot of people have said the next Tom Cruise, I've heard. He did this one. So he did Twisters, which is a legacy, whatever the hell you want to call it, sequel. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know what the hell this is. But it's connected to a popular film from the 90s. He's also doing the Backdraft remake. He signed on to do a remake for The Running Man that Schwarzenegger was in the 80s.
He was in Top Gun Maverick.
Top Gun Maverick, you mentioned. I mean, I don't see he's already done the successful romantic comedy, Anyone But You, with Sydney Sweeney, so he's dived into that pool as well.
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't really see a ceiling for this guy, unless he gets canceled for something and we find that out later. But otherwise, I don't see a ceiling for this dude. What about his kind of star power? How do you feel about him as an actor?
He was in The Dark Knight Rises as what? Huh?
What
the
fuck?
Now I gotta.
I know. I didn't know he was in that one.
And try to figure this out. Oh, he was Trader Number 1. So he must have been one of the characters, just one of the randos in the stock exchange sequence with Bane or whatever. Okay. No, I loved him in this. And you know what? Like every once in a while, Gerald, a human person comes along who's a Hollywood star who is literally a human cheat code. Like, it ain't fair that he is that goddamn attractive and also that talented and everything. When's he going to be in a musical and show us that he can sing pitch perfectly too, and everything else?
Dance and whatnot.
It ain't fair to the rest of us, okay? It just ain't fair to the rest of us. But no, I think he's great in this. I think he has so much charisma that he, even though you kind of, like, when you're first introduced to his character before they really kind of give you that little swerve, which I actually really liked. I actually really liked that they were, even though they were just YouTubers and whatever, I like that you're kind of, at first, you're kind of just like, oh, it's this, and there are a lot of industries and there are a lot of things like that are clogged with influencers that don't belong there. So that's definitely like a little modern thing that they brought into this movie that I actually really enjoyed, a little modern commentary or whatever. But I really liked that it flipped that on its head, where they were actually selling the shirts to make money to just give away free food and free water and like all that stuff to people that were affected by tornadoes. Like, that's really, really cool, you know. But he has the charisma, so even when you're first watching him and he just seems like to just be this ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, larger than life, like huge character, he's still got such a charm to him that you kind of can't hate him. Like, you kind of at first are just like, oh, this smarmy jerk, he's gonna just be this big smarmy jerk, and you kind of think he's gonna be the antagonist of the film for a bit, and then he ends up not being that. And then once he starts sharing the scenes directly with Kate, they have such a great chemistry.
I agree.
Just this amazing rapport back and forth, that even though they're talking about all this tornado stuff, again, tornado sense I don't have any idea about, but they're talking about all this stuff, and I'm just buying a hook, line, and sinker. Like, it really invests you in it. It's really, really, it's well written, it's well acted, it's well shot, it's well directed. It's, like I said, it's not like gonna blow you away in terms of being this amazing masterpiece by any means, but it's so much fun. It's such a watchable movie, and I think that's what some movies kind of forget to try to be. Sometimes they kind of try to forget to be really fun and engaging audience products that an audience can really, really watch and enjoy and engage with. This is the perfect summer blockbuster. Like I said, it's big, it's loud, it's dumb. There's lots of special effects galore. It's got just enough performances to make you care, but it's not trying to be anything more than it is. I think it knows what it is. I think it knows what it wants to be, and I don't think it tries to step outside of that. And I think for a movie like this, I think that's really important to hit that kind of formula, I think.
Yeah, when Glenn Powell and Daisy Edgar-Jones are sharing scenes together, they bring out the best in each other's characters, because you can tell that Tyler Owens is this like hotshot YouTuber, like almost like a Mr. Beast type character that, you know, his shtick is chasing tornadoes. And it's funny because you're watching it and you're going, I would sub to his channel. I would subscribe to this guy's channel. Like, he's super charismatic. He's funny. Like, he's doing shit that I would never do, but I get to be there with the camera and the thing. And, you know, I love Boone, his right-hand man. I thought he was hilarious, too, in this movie. But Glenn Powell, Tyler, sees in Kate, like, she's not really bought into it. She doesn't really care about his whole thing. You know, she's not falling at his knees because of the success that he's had on YouTube or whatever. So, you know, she'll just give him the comebacks real quick, you know, like, oh, maybe I can be on a t-shirt if I do good tomorrow or whatever. And he just loves that shit because, like, she's challenging him. But also along the way, he realizes this lady really knows her shit when it comes to science and tornadoes, and, like, she's the smartest one out here. And he realizes that really early on. Maybe the only other person that really knew that was Javi. But aside from Javi, like, he figured that out just when they were standing out there in the field when he first met her, and the way she was kind of talking about the clouds, and, you know, and then she ended up calling what ended up happening because of the instinct that she has in that profession. I wanted to mention, because I gave it a 7 out of 10, obviously, I wanted to mention something you just said that I somewhat disagree with, because one of the reasons I brought this down a point or two for me is because I do feel like this film was kind of all over the place tonally, which not necessarily, I mean, it definitely didn't hurt my enjoyment of the film. Like, I still really enjoyed it. I've already seen it twice, and it hadn't even been out a week yet. But like it was like a disaster movie. Then it was kind of like a love story, kind of like a drama, and then it would do this thing where it would like kind of focus on the towns that got destroyed, and like kind of a somber tone where we're supposed to, have these emotional connections to these characters that obviously we never met, but their town was destroyed. And you mentioned the T-shirt thing, which I actually really like that too, but that was also kind of out of nowhere because, kind of like what you said, it seemed like they didn't really have a quote unquote mission other than we're doing this crazy chasing tornadoes, shooting fireworks, playing country music, doing whatever. And then you find out they have this kind of soft spot, which is, I mean, it's fine, but it just did kind of like happen really quickly. So it kind of felt like it didn't really know. It was a lot of different things all at once, which I'm not saying that is bad. I mean, you can be more than one thing. That's fine. You don't have to be one note for 2 hours. But do you get what I'm saying there, where it kind of shifted back and forth tonally? Obviously, it didn't bother you.
I mean, I don't look at this as a disaster movie just because it has natural disasters like tornadoes in it. I think that it's much more of a drama that happens to have some wild and wacky tornadoes and stuff going on in it, like where it has disaster set pieces, but it's not a disaster movie. So I didn't look at it as a disaster movie. If I'm going to think of a disaster movie, I'm going to think of one of those just Roland Emmerich like disaster schlockfest where it's like everything and anywhere is all blowing up and falling apart and like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
This kind of thing I don't really view in the same light because it's just a little bit, I don't know, it's just different to me. And as far as, I mean, I just like that it's not something that the film really dwells on, but I really think it is a good thing, and especially as someone, and a lot of people listening to this probably do this too, but there's a tendency, I'll say, in the current day to kind of just dump on all influencers like as a blanket, like all influencers are bad. They're just trying to get in there and steal the spotlight. They're just trying to get in there and make money off of it. They're not trying to do whatever. And it's like, but sometimes the truth is a little bit deeper, and I don't mind, like, if the film doesn't dwell on it at all, it's literally a blip, kind of like oh yeah, she's like Javi's actually kind of not working for the good guy anymore, and he's kind of not actually doing the good thing anymore. Anthony Ramos also fantastic in this film, by
Really
the way.
good.
Like really love.
He was a
him as well.
conflicted character in this movie too. I thought he did a really good job because you could tell he was
did real
super
good.
conflicted. Because he got with that guy that
I
was
love
the
that
main.
It doesn't really dwell on it though. It doesn't spend too much time with the like whatever ideas. It just one thing that I really think it does a good job of doing, and I think this is something that we need a lot more of just in modern day and in life in general, is just getting to know people beyond what you see on the surface. Like when you look at Tyler Owens and the Tornado Wrangler shtick, when you look at all that just on the surface, you immediately draw a conclusion about Tyler Owens and about all those characters and everything like that. And I like that the film takes at least a moment, because everybody's different from just the person that you see on the surface.
Sure.
Everybody's got more depth to them. Everybody's got more things that make them tick and more things that make those people who they are. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing, and maybe that's why it resonated a lot more with me, is because I like that's such a great thing to put more out there into the world, because I think too often in life, I think too many of us, and I even do it myself. I can't even exempt myself from it. Like, I think too many of us look at other people or look at other things, and we look at only the face value, and we stop there. We stop at the face. And I don't think that's fair to people, because there's a lot of layers and there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of different things to people. And I think, especially like you look on social media, you look on Twitter or whatever, everybody is so quick to try to tear somebody else down for the slightest of anything. If you disagree with them about anything, or even if you don't out and out agree with them, even if you don't disagree with them, they're immediately down your throat about different stuff.
It's horrible these days.
That's the way that society has kind of adapted to. So I like this movie taking that little chance on just being like, hey, you know what, look just a little bit, look a little bit closer, because you know like you might see a little bit something different when you take a closer look at some people.
So I want to ask you about the ending, the final act of the movie, but before that I want to ask, what was your favorite scene in this film? Because there was some I thought really good effects in this movie. In fact, I don't think it's too far-fetched to even consider that this could be nominated or at least be on the short list for visual effects when we get there at the end of the year.
I agree.
Really, really good special effects here. The score, I was a little uninspired, and the country music I wasn't a huge fan of, but that's just me. I mean, I just don't like it. But, I mean, it makes sense in Oklahoma, I guess, so I'm okay with it.
I'm not a huge fan of country music either, but it made sense for the setting. And
Yeah.
it didn't take me out of the movie. Like, I do not like country at all, but it didn't take me out of the movie because it just made sense. It's like it's a movie set in Oklahoma. Of course,
Yeah,
there's gonna
right.
be country. Of course, there's going to be nothing but country music blaring in the background. Like, of course, that makes
Right.
perfect sense to me.
Right,
So it didn't-
rodeos and whatnot.
It didn't
yeah.
even skip a beat, man. Like, I didn't even miss a beat. And, well, I guess Tyler and the Wranglers are from Arkansas, but even, like, they're from the
Even
South.
still. Yeah,
You
even
know?
still.
So yeah, it didn't really raise an alarm with me. It was perfectly fine. Favorite scene?
Yeah, curious. Yeah.
Man, I'm not gonna lie. I really want to say, as much as there's no Glenn Powell in it, but I really want to say that opening sequence, that whole opening sequence, because it really sets the emotional tone for the rest of the movie. You don't really get to learn a whole lot about any of the rest of these characters in the film, and you don't even really get to learn that much about Kate beyond that opening sequence. So that entire opening basically sets the emotional stage for the entire rest of the film. It's another thing it has in common with Godzilla 2014 because it's exactly the same. Like, it really sets the emotional stakes for the entirety of the thing. But even so, some of these characters were in danger. Like, even all the way to the movie theater at the end when the tornado's heading in and she's going out there and she's gonna dig those augers down into the ground and release the stuff and try to kill a tornado and all that kind of stuff like that. Like, it was exhilarating stuff. That's another thing that this movie had in spades. It had tension. Like, I was worried for these characters so many different times because, like, they're going headlong into danger and all these crazy weird things. Like, I'm Ben, like the British reporter who was doing the ride along with Tyler like the whole time. I'm crapping my pants literally the whole time.
Right.
Oh my god, no, get me away
Yeah,
from
no,
this
he
one.
was a funny
I'm gonna be
character.
falling out the truck, throwing up everywhere after I'm riding around with that too, like, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like,
thought,
I love that. Like, this movie had so much tension too, though. Like, I was like, I felt myself at one point. Like, I really realized this at one point watching this movie. Like, I had my hands like on the armrest of the movie. Like, I'm like forward in my seat, like gripping a little bit. Like, I realized it at some point. Probably, I can't remember what scene. I think it was probably the nighttime scene when they went to the rodeo and then that tornado hit. Like, at night. Like, that was a harrowing scene. That was great stuff. And I'm just like I felt that, and I don't feel that often in movies where, like, I'm like literally like I'm leaning forward in the seat and like my arms are, I'm like tense because I'm just like, I'm so invested in what's happening. This movie's so goddamn good. I might even bump my score.
Good.
You gotta stop me before I get the 10 card out.
I know, Jesus. My favorite scene was that rodeo scene, I think. I just love it. Kind of became a creature feature for like 5 minutes. And it was this kind of monster barreling down on them unexpectedly. And they have that one shot. Chung does that one shot where, and of course it's effects for the most part, but it, like, there's lightning and the kind of sky lights up because of the lightning, and you can see the black monstrous tornado that's like right there, but you can't see it without the lightning.
That's such a good shot, dude. That's
dude. I was like, okay. And then she, her instincts kick in again, and she gets the family down in the pool with her and Glenn Powell. And it was, like you said, very harrowing. And the couple that were being pricks in the lobby or whatever end up getting in their truck, and they get sucked up into the tornado. And Dan actually leans over to me during that, and he goes, "That's okay. They were assholes." They get killed, But I thought that's my favorite scene. And then I did also think it was really cool, although it didn't have as much like emotional heft to it as the rodeo scene. It was really cool to see the tornadoes kind of blowing through that gas power plant or whatever, and all the explosions were getting sucked up in the tornado and stuff. That was really cool too, from an effects standpoint. So I really like those scenes.
Yeah.
The ending, man. So how do you feel? I mean, obviously you gave this a 9. You love this movie, but the ending, a lot of shit happens. A lot of stuff kind of comes together kind of quickly. She rides out there to save the day and survives. And then, I mean, we could talk about whatever you want to talk about, but then we get that kind of cute little airport scene at the end where Javi drops her off to go back to New York. And I love, which also speaks to Edgar-Jones' performance, which I've already praised, how he's like talking about, are you coming back to Oklahoma? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, are you kidding? Are you serious? Like, I really want to see you. And she's like, well, if you feel it, chase it, which I love, because that's his, slogan, and she's kind of turning it back on him.
Yeah.
And even Javi's like, dude, what are you doing? Like, but I've seen a lot of people up in arms about no kiss and no romance, if you will, in this movie, which is true. I mean, right? I mean, it's more of a kind of flirtatious kinship partnership with them. I mean, you can see there's chemistry, which we both agree that there was chemistry, but they never do anything. There's never a kiss. There's never, making out. None of that stuff.
Okay,
so
okay. Whoa. I'm gonna stop you right there, buddy. I'm gonna stop you right there. Okay, because okay. While yes, they shot one. I know you've probably seen the footage of it.
I saw that. That's why people are upset about. Yeah.
And they didn't put it in the movie. Okay.
Right.
I'm going to tell you two things. Number one, the film doesn't need it because number two, for a fact they left that airport and they banged for a week straight. He was blowing loads like a tornado, like left, right, and center. Like there was so much sexual tension between those characters, like the whole time. Like, ain't no way they walked away from all that. And like, I mean, you think about like the high tense situations. I always go back to Speed. It's like people in like life threatening situations and like all this kind of different stuff, like whatever. Miss me with that. Too.
Well,
like straight up miss me with that.
The cheesy answer too for me could be, because I didn't think about it until I saw the uproar on Twitter about it and stuff, and the hidden scene that never got put in the movie, like you said. But honestly, watching it, like it was a love triangle between the two of them and the Twisters. I mean, they were attracted to chasing those tornadoes. And at the end of the movie, they get the weather report coming over the speakers, blah, 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 touchdown, whatever, and they leave to go chase it. That's perfect because that's what they've been doing the whole movie. Now, to your point, at some point, they're going to stop doing that and they're going to bang. I mean, let's be honest, I mean, they're two hot people that have chemistry. So
the second, like Gerald, at the end when the auger digs into the concrete outside the airport, that's going to be them physically later. Like they're stopping at the first hotel they get to from that airport. If maybe they're just in the back of the truck on the right. Like I don't even know.
Show.
It's happening like 1,000 times. There's so much chemistry between those characters. Like I don't doubt it for a second. That's why I don't really miss the fact that it doesn't have the cliche Hollywood kiss in it. I don't think it needs it.
Well, also, let's leave something to be desired here because it made $85 million in its opening weekend. It is going to be the summer blockbuster. I think Deadpool and Wolverine is its only real competition. Next week, we'll see how that goes, how far it falls off because of Deadpool. But nevertheless, this is looking good for them to have Warner Brothers to do a sequel on this. Or I guess a third. I still don't know what the hell this is. But another one in this franchise. So I think if they're married in the next one or if they're a couple in the next one, I'm fine with that. I mean, we've got that little hint during the credits, right, where she's doing research with him and his team now.
Yeah.
So we kind of know that she's with them now. So let's do it. I'm all about it. I'm all about it.
To me again.
Yeah, I'm ready.
You got to change the thing. Like literally, it can just be them going in to whip more tornado ass. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and then we'll get our kiss or sex scene or whatever. That's fine. We'll do it in the sequel.
You
Nick.
just wanted the tornado to rip her top off. Just admit it.
I did actually.
I
can't believe her shirt stayed on the whole time.
He's so transparent. You can't even.
I mean, we had Glenn Powell walking in the rain in the white T-shirt. I mean, which was also one of my favorite scenes, by the way.
Human cheat code. It's not fair, man. It's not.
I mean, it's crazy. Anything else you want to say about this thing and wrapping up, buddy?
No, I loved it. Like, honest to God, I loved it. Perfect summer movie, perfect summer blockbuster. Does not require you to do anything as a viewer. Just go and sit down and just enjoy the ride. Like, literally, it doesn't ask you, like, that's the thing about, like, Logan and Deadpool, which I'm excited for. I bought my tickets, like, 2 months ago. So I've got my tickets. I'm ready to see it. I see it on Thursday, I think.
I see it tomorrow night.
Yeah, so I'm really, really excited. I can't wait to see it, but it's a completely different kind of experience. Like, that's got all the Marvel baggage it's carrying with it and all the Fox X-Men baggage and all that kind of stuff. Like, I'm really hoping it's going to be good. I really, really am. But like this, like I said, this is a perfect summer movie. Go into that theater, just sit back, just enjoy the ride, just let it happen to you. Like, some movies you just got to let happen to you, and this is one of them.
And what this movie has going for it, and I'm not trying to pit it against Deadpool or whatever, what this movie has going for it is you don't need any precursor content. Like, you don't even really need to see the first one, really.
No,
I mean,
and,
you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, Deadpool, Wolverine, you're going to at least, like you said, it's carrying baggage with it from the MCU, and I agree with that. And I think that that's already kind of set it up to, it's got to work a little bit harder, you know what I mean, to kind of overcome some of that stuff. Whereas
Because
Twisters,
no matter how many of
it's
that,
just a good
no matter
time.
how much of, and I'm worried about it for when we review it next week. I guess we'll see how it goes, but I'm worried for that because, like, all in all, at the end of the day, like, is it going to have a lot of funny gags in it? I'm sure it will. But how much of it is going to be, and granted, I've been out on the MCU since Thor,
Me
Love
too.
and Thunder, since that absolute garbage. I hate
too.
Marvel. I hate everything associated with it, so I have no faith. So I'm so wary for the MCU parts of this movie. Like, all the
Me too.
stuff that's going to have to try to tie this into the MCU, like,
Me
I
too.
do not want.
I can't do all that homework,
all.
dude. I can't do
I
it. I
don't
just
wanna
want to
be
be
in it.
entertained. I can't. I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
And that's why Twisters is a different kind of experience, because you don't really need anything but the 2 hours that you're there. That's it. That's all you need. You know, I took
You
my
need a harness
wife.
to watch this in a movie theater, so you don't
I
jump
know.
out the seat.
I took my wife and son to see it yesterday because I wanted them to see it on the big screen, and I'm glad I did. I'm going to rewatch the original. I got it on 4K recently. I'm going to check that out. I think I agree with Nick. This is a great, great time at the movies. Grab some popcorn, sit down, and just, like Nick said, let it happen. It's a great flick. By the way, I pulled it up, Nick, before we sign off. I was looking since January. Now, you gave Maestro an 8, but that was technically a 23 film. So the other films, you haven't given any film a 9 this year.
Oh, wow.
The only films on the show, I know you said you saw Inside Out, which you may or may not have given a 9, but the only ones that we reviewed on the show that you gave an 8 to that came out this year were Challengers and The Fall Guy.
I'd say I'd probably put Inside Out 2 between a 7 and an 8. I don't know. I didn't officially rate it because I've been keeping up with my letterbox. I haven't been keeping up with any of that kind of stuff. Like,
Dude, you
what else did I see this year that I didn't review for the show? I saw Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. That's like a 5 or a 6 maybe. So, you know, I don't know.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this will be it. This is number 1 so far.
This one, man, yeah. I was going to say,
Sorry,
this
not
one
sorry. I loved it. It's so good. It's so good.
Challengers, Fall
This
Guy.
is the kind of,
you know
and
what?
I know it's a cliche to say this, but this is the kind of movie that movie theaters were made to see. This is the kind of movie that you got to go, you got to sit down in the theater, you got to experience it, you got to let it happen to you, you got to enjoy it, you got to love it.
You're gonna think this is crazy, but what I kind of equated this to of my enjoyment level of it was Roadhouse, which I loved, and you gave that a 1. I'm looking at the sheet right now. You gave that a 1, which is a fucking travesty, by the way.
Yeah, 1 is too high for that movie. I agree. It should be a negative
God.
7.
I also gave that a 7, by the way. It's a really good movie that you can watch on Amazon Prime right now, starring Mr. Jake Gyllenhaal. And what's his name? What's the UFC guy's name?
Conor McGregor.
Conor McGregor. That's that guy too. Yeah, he was something in it. Okay, that's our discussion on Twisters. Nick, I'm thrilled to have you back, man. Next week, by the way, just to wrap up, it was a 9 from Nick, a 7 from me, which is an 8 overall from the P's. On Twisters, I think it's fair to say that we want you to go see it. Another pair of glasses have made their way onto the show. Nick, I'm thrilled that you're here. Glasses Guy is back. Next week, it's Deadpool and Wolverine. Nick, what do you want to say to the people in signing off, man?
Yeet.
We'll see you next week for a Marvel movie that you may or may not have heard of. We'll talk then.